Hello, welcome to episode 45 of Women of the Future. Today we will be taking up the subject of women and the arts. If this is of interest to you, I invite you to make yourself a cup of tea or coffee, sit back and enjoy the half an hour that is before you so that we can access Sister Denise's mind in share what it means to have a certain amount of creativity and how to use it to your advantage. Sister Denise, it is wonderful to have you back. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Women and the arts. What is one to know about this subject?
Well, the first thing to know about it is the arts is the terrain of men.
Well, hold on. What makes you say that? I can't say that I actually agree with you, Sister Denise, because history is full of examples of women who have been exceptionally creative and who have been acknowledged for their creativity.
It's not full of them. It has a tiny little section of them. Women are considered more okay as artisans, but the arts, fine arts, the sort of professional arts, women are really kept out of that unless they're ballerinas. The composers, of course, if you're an opera singer soprano, you can be a woman, but you can be a what's called a countertenor, which is the man who can handle soprano levels. But, you know, in terms of painting, sculpture, there are very, very few women who are counted among the great artists. And so I think the important thing to do probably in this show is that we really make a distinction between the arts and being an artisan, because women are natural weavers, natural dressmakers, natural at making the home, making the food, making the garden, making things beautiful, and this is artisan, but then the arts is another range.
Describe arts for us as you just stated.
Well, there I'm talking about fine arts, the professional level of arts.
So music, dance,
music,
theatre.
dance, everything to do with taking creativity to its highest level, you see, and women are very often excluded from that. You know, how many Barbara Hepworths do you have? How much do they have to really fight against just to have their rightful place, you know? Of course, you can't be a male ballerina. The art of ballet is really stacked towards the women until you have a Nijinsky or a Nureyev, you know. But otherwise, the arts are really the terrain of men. And usually the great painters, the great sculptors, even sort of biologically and socially, the women are kept away because it's a male territory. For that, the business of the arts, this type of thing. And in the schools, the art schools, the schools of the Renaissance, for example, it's a very male area. And then the women were the models, but not the artists, you see.
You have taken us through a historical overview of mankind. Would you say that that is the case in secular society as well?
Well, it's totally a secular society.
Okay, so what I'm thinking of is that there are a number of women who, for example, chose to be artists who have excelled in, for example, abstract art, and doesn't actually concern herself with whether she gets support or not, because she's that good, her stuff gets sold. You're referring to something totally different.
That's not true.
Okay, say more.
One of the ones we missed out a minute ago is writing, you know. Yeah. I mean, Akhmatova is a very great Russian poet, but take George Eliot. You know, George Eliot couldn't get published until she called herself George. So there are many women who have to be much, much better, just as we looked at in the corporate world. A woman has to be 10 times better than her counterpart in order to be considered at a parity level. In the same way, in the arts, she has to be really, really good, and she has to really fight against much more than what the male counterpart has to fight against in order to, you know, get herself recognized and acknowledged as one of the greats, you know. So the arts is just one more area in which that occurs. And of course, in the arts, classical arts, the muses are all female. So the woman is considered in the arts as the inspiration of the artist. But for the woman to be the artist and the inspiration for the artist is, I mean, it's not traditional. So why I think we're taking this up is because women are encouraged and allowed to be artisans, because that's second-rate art, ordinary art. You know what I mean? And you don't get lots of money for that, and you're supposed to do it for free anyway. But you know, to move from the artisan to the true artist, maybe it's not really a movement, but there is the heart and soul and spirit of the artist who has that sense of harmony and beauty and perfection that is recognized in the great artists. So there are many people who seriously believe that a woman is not capable of that. And because of that belief, any woman who gets near it will be strongly discouraged. And so those women who have crossed that glass ceiling and actually made it as a recognized great artist, you get more in modern day. In the olden times, it was absolutely forbidden, you know.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. Is the tide changing?
Well, here we are looking at women of the future, and part of our vision of women of the future is parity between men and women, which means that the tide is changing, has to change, so that women in the field of arts, all the arts, have the barriers taken down so that it's a level playing field. I think we're looking at this. And to say that a woman is inherently incapable of reaching those heights, that belief has to be challenged. And so we add ourselves to that challenge.
Okay, Sister Denise, there is a woman watching you right now who has a burning desire to excel in one of those previously forbidden fields that you just mentioned, and yet she does not have the support on the external. What does she stand to do?
I think it's not that happens. In my experience, I've been with many younger women or of my own age, and what I find myself doing is saying, you know, you're an artist. And she'll say, what? Why do you think I'm an artist? I say, you're an artist. Takes one to know one. I'm an artist. Takes one to know one. And then once that acknowledgement and support starts to be given, then only she starts to be able to discover, because there are many women who just do not fit because they're steered in a direction that doesn't suit what they are. And very, very few women will be identified by the wider parents, school, or whatever as artists. And I remember one time a very strange thing happened to me. My art teacher at school was a very unusual woman, very unusual. And I had made a sculpture of just someone sitting. And I thought it was just, you know, just a piece of clay, which is what everybody else thought it was. And this art teacher took this thing and said, "This is a piece of art." And everybody looked at it and said, "What? That's a piece of art?" And even me, I said, "That's so ugly, you know. Why do you think it's a piece of art?" But it had the movement, the energy, or whatever it is that she saw in it, and it was, you know, put up in front of people. But that's rare. And it's only when something like that, some kind of acknowledgement like that is given, that a person will develop that.
Okay, so then, Sister Denise, what if the woman in question is not so fortunate enough to meet somebody who points out to her that she is an artist? What happens then? Does the creativity within her just die? Or remain unacknowledged, unborn, unexpressed?
I think it remains undeveloped, uncultivated, and she may use it in other ways, in interior decoration, but she'll never think she's an artist. She'll think it's normal, you have to do that, you know. But a few, and fortunately more and more, are receiving the encouragement. I mean, women are given support to be interior decorators, dress designers, but if you go into haute couture, it's all men. Very, very few women. Coco Chanel, very few, you know. And she never really thought of herself as a great. It came later. She was just trying to make some money, you know, by making hats. But this is the thing, the woman artist doesn't really think of herself as an artist. She just thinks, oh, you know, this is pretty, this is beautiful. And then, of course, greatness is something that's acknowledged by other people. And I have an uncle who was a cubist in France, now deceased.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, eh?
Cubist.
Define?
Cubism was one of the schools of art during the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and quite an important school in terms of fine arts. And he was telling me, look, you know, if you state, I'm an artist, and you use your life to create, you know, and he would be painting all day long, every day for his whole life, the fine artist. And he said to me, you know, it's a bet, because you will never really know if you're a great until after you're dead. That's when your life work is assessed. And so you just have to take the risk. And his work is very good, very well acknowledged, but it was never acknowledged as with the greats, you know. It's not a Dali, it's not a Mondrian, you know, but up there near them. And I think that, of course, there's many, many levels of success as an artist, but I think there are far too many women who are, in a way, penalized for daring to think of themselves as artists, or she will be wanting to go to art school. There was one young girl who was miserable, very young, about like 10, 12 years old, and maybe slightly older. And she came to me with, which I think, a lot of courage, and she said, I need a private consultation. So I said, okay, let's go in the other room, we have a private consultation. And she said, I am absolutely miserable. I started to ask her some things, and I've pretty quickly found, you know, you're an artist. So I said, come back tomorrow and paint me 3 pictures. Bring me 3 pictures tomorrow. She said, really? Yeah. I said, come back. She came back the next day, beautiful flower, very well executed, portrait, and some other thing, a landscape. And I said to her, okay, I'm going to talk to your parents and I'm going to get them to promise to send you to art school. And it turned her life around.
You've given us now 2 examples of where you've seen creativity in somebody and helped bring it to the fore. If someone's watching you right now does not have that luxury of support. Okay, this program is a way of offering them support.
Yes, it is.
How are we going to help her to emerge her inner artist? How are we going to do that?
Well, it's not really even her inner artist. She is an artistic being.
How do you know?
You have to take a risk and say to yourself, self, the way I look at myself, you know what? My conclusion is I'm an artist. You know, for me, now I will say I'm an artist and people will say, well, where's your art? But I just know I'm an artist. I write, I do various things, but maybe, you know, it's not in the fixed arts that people, you know, look for. Oh, you're not in the museum as a painter, you're not recognized as a sculptor, etc. But you don't have to be a great artist to be an artist, you know. And in the same way, someone's a scientist, you know, they recognize themselves. In the world today, if you're a scientist, you're given every kind of support because the world wants technical people and scientific people. And artists are needed, commercial artists are needed. But the spirit of the artist is something special.
Yeah,
because you're specially sensitive, you're specially good at color, shape, harmonies, and so on and so forth. And people will usually say, well, you can't make money out of that.
Yes, that brings us to my next question. Many a creative woman is discouraged from the field of art or the study of art by obtaining a degree in art simply because it won't put food on the table. I mean, for many, studying art means becoming an art teacher and no further. So on the one hand, people follow that advice because one has to eat, and on the other hand, you're a frustrated woman because you want to be something other than what you become. How do you do the tightrope walk in that scenario?
I think, again, it has to do with the social attitudes. There's one film, The Dead Poets Society, which has examined it quite beautifully. That was not for a girl, but for a boy, you know, who was a brilliant actor and whose father effectively killed him because he wanted him to be a banker or something, you know. And so that tells us something about our socialization, our parenting, and our ideas about sort of destroying the individuality of a person, because a child is not an object. A child is a person in a young body, and that person has rights. Just as we've been talking about the rights of a woman, there's also the rights of a child, and women and children are close.
My next question to you is, does God affect one's ability to express oneself as far as the arts are concerned? Is that his area of interest or not?
Well, I think of God as a great artist. After all,
God is an artist.
God is an art. God, the creator. What's that? There's art.
Okay, I never thought of God as an artist, but let's hear it.
Yeah. What does God do? God will take a basic, you know, human who is rather worn out and reform that human being and make that human being into the most beautiful, the most talented, the most virtuous, the most empowered individual possible. That is what God does.
Mm-hmm. And how does God's presence impact on one's life as far as the arts are concerned?
If you want to execute an artistic work, you need the power of the divine. And so, you know, many artists, they get very frustrated because the creative inspiration doesn't come. Now, when you have a very strong connection with the Supreme Being, it flows. It flows really well because you're nurturing it through your meditation, through your silence. This innovation and original work comes from silence.
I have seen many works of art that simply express a woman's pain. It's so obvious if you look at the canvas or hear the music or any other aspect of her creation. I feel pain watching such or looking at such things. Is it not a question that whatever is foremost in you has to come out?
It's a very important energy, pain, which can come through art.
I've seen examples of that, yes.
There's masses of it. So art is not pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty doesn't mean art. That's more like artisan.
Okay.
Art is the ability to take what is there in the human spirit, whether it's beauty, whether it's pain, whether it's anguish, whatever it is, and deliver it so that it can be seen and felt by others. That's the artist. He's the sense organ of humanity.
Artist is the sense organ of humanity. What does that mean? I've never heard those words before.
Well, people may be feeling something that they can't define or describe or articulate, and the artist will do it. Say, okay, what you're feeling is this, and they'll say, yeah, it is. That's right. Thank you.
So art speaks to us.
Of course, it's a necessary thing for us because it allows us, it's a kind of cathartic function, and it allows us to know what's happening inside us if we're unable to define it.
Denise, is there an artist in every woman?
Well, I think every person, male or female, has that component, but very often the socializing will destroy it. And I think that the more a person, or the closer a person is to their spiritual purity, the more they're automatically artistic. And when we are away from our spirit, then we're more disconnected from that.
Okay, so Sister Denise, somebody is watching you right now who needs her artistic side to be seen and to be acknowledged. What is your message to her?
Well, my question is, why do you need it to be acknowledged? It makes you very dependent. And I think that it's never going to work. If you are an artist, it's going to come through. And what I think you have to deal with is other people's reaction to it.
That is very important, because many an artist was subdued and allowed themselves to be subdued because of adverse reactions from the external, which is such a tragedy.
Well, yes. I mean, I remember I used to paint portraits and stick them on the windows looking out to the street, and people hated that, so I stopped doing it, but they were not bad.
Right, okay. Well then, Sister Denise, the artist, had something to share with us today. Would you like to leave our viewers with some parting words of wisdom?
Well, I think that as you get close to your own essential spirit, you also get close to the artistic side of yourself. So allow yourself to be artistic and take it as far as you feel you would like to take it, because it's only going to make your surroundings more beautiful, more meaningful, more harmonious, and that is a very beautiful contribution at any level of the arts.
Sorry, before we say goodbye, Sister Denise, you mentioned how one includes God in that. How does one invoke God's presence as far as creativity is concerned? Could you leave us with some words on that?
Well, I think that just go into your silence. Spend time in silence, and the creative energy comes, because the source of creativity is obviously God, isn't it?
I think, though, that far too few know what the connection is between creativity and silence.
I'm sure you're right, yeah, because people try and sort of get it from out here somewhere, you see, and it doesn't work, so it's very, very frustrating. And so you have to go deep. And when you go deep, you also go dark. and very often out of a deep, dark place comes something beautiful, you know, because art is capable of transforming the anguish of the human predicament into something very meaningful and beautiful.
I hope you have enjoyed this half an hour with us. Sister Denise has spoken of the woman and arts, and she has spoken how historically women have actually not been allowed to express themselves fully as far as the arts are concerned. A very beautiful and powerful message as to how to acknowledge your own artistic side and how to bring it to the fore and not to suppress any aspect of your personality. And I think that is the most beautiful message for me. I don't know if you knew this before, but I've also learned something today, that there is a direct link between one's silence and one's creativity. Not many people know that, but this is why we watch today's show, because we can learn from a mind of a yogi. Thank you so much, Sister Denise, for sharing your wisdom with us this half hour, and I thank you for joining us at home. We will see you again for the next episode. Take care. Cheers.